Action.
Action. Atomsplit
Action.
podcast.
Number 15, I think.
15. Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I know.
And these are fun.
Yeah. Let's hope the world finds out.
Yeah.
So we are talking about the passing of Stan Lee
Yeah. It's
after,
a sad day
yes.
for comic fans. Sad
Yes.
week. Sad week because it was earlier in the week that this happened. So.
Right. And you are working on a little illustration there.
Yeah, portrait of Stan the Man.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. What was your first... I mean, it's like, what is your first memory or experience with knowing who he was?
My first memory of knowing who he was uh the part of the comic, like I think it was at the end, maybe it was in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
called
Mm-hmm.
the Bullpen Bulletins,
Yep.
and I was reading those I think before I even really knew what a bullpen was.
Right.
So yeah, like he would say he would talk about all the comics coming out and talk about the guys in the office, but later I found out that they weren't really actually there. There was no bullpen.
Right. Right.
It was just him making it up, which was and that's cool. Uh, that's that's one thing about him I really liked was he was a P.T. Barnum of comics. He
Yep.
he sold comics and he loved selling comics. I mean, he loved comics and I think, I mean, I don't know for sure, but he was really into selling, the idea of making comics
Yeah.
and comics in general.
Right. I think I would agree. My exposure was suddenly, reading all the comics and like in the very first page, it always say Stanley Presents.
Yeah.
Like at the top of the homepage or whatever. First homepage. Wow, I'm using modern terms for comics. Um, and then yeah, the soapbox or stand soapbox or bullpen bulletins, and you suddenly realized after you read so many comics, or especially the ones that he was writing, or publisher. He was the publisher, right, for a while,
Yeah,
many
he
years,
was I think he was the editor in chief and
editor in chief. And you realize, wow, there's this guy named Stan Lee who's responsible for all this great stuff that I'm enjoying and reading and go every week to the store to buy.
responsible for
So,
everything. Everything.
yeah. So then when I got what were early trade paperback collections of origins of Marvel Comics and the whole collection and the villains, and it was all, he wrote the prefaces and wrote all the Spider-Man stories inside. And he's like, man, this guy, he's what it is. So
Yeah.
that was early on too, right? So
Yeah, that was I think his as far as writing goes, his time was 60 to 70 or thereabouts.
right,
Like a
okay,
decade of him writing, and he had a way of writing that they called the Marvel way, or he
mm-hmm,
developed it called the Marvel way, and he would say, um, he would go to like one of his illustrators, and he would say,
that's right, that's right,
I want a story about Spider-Man, um, having to fight the Vulture while he's on his lunch break, and he has to get a school project turned in on time or something like that. Something. And then Steve Ditko would go and draw that idea, and then he would later go in and based on the drawings add the dialogue.
right, that's right,
So
and
doing that, I mean, he would have like 3, 4 comics in the works at one time,
Yeah.
and he would just be going back in and doing and putting in the dialogue.
So, and he worked with Kirby like that too, right?
Yeah, he worked with Kirby like that. He worked with John Romita like that. He worked with everybody like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they use the Marvel way anymore since they have more writers than him.
Right.
Um, but but while he was there, he was the top dog.
Yeah.
That's how he would do it. I mean, he was the boss at Marvel, and he was the boss
Right.
because he inherited it from his uncle or cousin or something close, something family related.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he worked for them for a long time, and
Right.
and Jack Kirby worked for them, and then that his uncle fired Jack Kirby, and then when Stan uh, got in charge, he rehired Jack Kirby.
Okay. And that's when they did
The
the
Fantastic
famous.
Four
Right. Okay. Yeah.
and everything else. I mean,
Right.
and you can't like no one that has ever tried to draw a comic or ever gotten into comics in America can say that they weren't in some way, somehow influenced by Stan Lee because it's impossible not to be.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you would never, no one would ever just read Superman. You would sooner or later come across something that Stan Lee had a hand in or built.
Yeah.
Like, even
Right.
if he didn't, even if he, like, he made the first 5 X-Men or 6 X-Men or whatever there were, and then every other X-Man that came along, he might not have made those characters up, but if it wasn't for the first 6 and the idea of the X-Men, or first 5 or
Right.
whatever, and the idea of the X-Men, you wouldn't have all those other X-Men. And I mean, everybody loves Wolverine, and he wouldn't have been
Yeah.
around if Stan Lee hadn't have made up the Hulk or the X-Men or any of that stuff. I mean, he had a hand in making up so much stuff that's influenced everybody. I mean, can you even
Mm-hmm.
imagine like influencing everybody that loves comics?
A huge, huge thing.
Yeah, I think it was
And
bigger
to
than he thought it was.
probably so. Yeah.
I,
And to be such a, seemingly humble guy for all
yeah,
that, is also pretty, immensely cool.
yeah. Now I know you have any personal stories about Stanley?
I mean, the only ones that I have is in the last 8 years when you and I started doing conventions, and we actually we saw him. He
Yeah,
was next door to us, so that's when it became full circle, and it was like, wow, Stan Lee Comics booth is right across from us in Dragon Con Year One. Right across from us, 2 doors down, and before the con starts, there's Stan Lee talking to the guys in the booth, and we're sitting there. Wow, that's him.
yeah,
We're 20 feet away from him, and then which was super cool. And then I think was it a MegaCon? Like we were at the pool bar or something eating, and
yeah.
him and his entourage, whatever, went by. So, I mean, and it's just like, wow. So, okay, so if we wouldn't be here doing Atomsplit comics and promoting it at these cons if it hadn't been for that guy.
Right. If it hadn't been
And
for Stan Lee, for sure.
that legend is right there within 20, 30 feet of us.
Yeah.
And then he was at many other cons, in the signing lines and stuff. We didn't do that part, and I know that you had stuff signed by him, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you got close
Yeah, I talked to him once. He was
to have comics signed, right?
yeah, he was I stood in line for like I don't know, it must have been like an hour, maybe 2 hours to get a comic signed, and he had nothing to do with this comic. It's at one in one sense he had nothing to do with the comic. In another sense he had everything to do with the comic. You know, like I said before,
Yeah.
if he had not created the X-Men, I wouldn't have that copy of X Factor. You know, none of the characters
Just-
he made up, but if he hadn't have been around to make the X-Men, none of those characters would have existed, and that comic wouldn't have existed.
That's what you had signed?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay.
had a comic. He had nothing to do with Sign, but everything to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like parlay that into the cameos in the movies. He's in Guardians of the Galaxy in a cameo, and he didn't have anything to do directly with creating those characters, right? So,
Right.
he's in those. So here he was. So yeah, that's cool that he didn't say, "Hey kid, I'm not signing this."
No, he was like, "What's your name?" And told him my name, and he was like, "Thanks for stopping by." I mean, I really can't remember because it's been a while, but he was
Like how long ago was that? Was that it's 90s or
yeah, it had to be like maybe
and where was it?
maybe mid '90s. It was at Dragon Con when Dragon Con was about comics.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, cool.
So yeah, he was not he was in his good years, you know,
Yeah.
like
Like we when we did our cons, he was in those late years, but he was still, coherent and doing things. And then I think in the last few years, obviously he was older and wasn't quite as there, if you will.
yeah,
So
he lost his sight and hearing, I think.
yeah.
But so he didn't live without some controversy.
All right.
Cause he when he started out with at what it was Timely at the time, I think it was
Right.
Timely, or maybe it was Atlas, but I think it was Timely. It was working for his uncle, and then he moved up to like, the writing position. Um, and I don't know if at that time he was exactly editor in chief or whatever, but like we talked about, he was working with Kirby and Ditko and some other people and writing his Marvel way.
Mm-hmm.
And he was at a conference for like they were making a society or a club for just for comics creators in New York. And as a writer, he went up there and he said, "If you're stupid if you want to get into the comics business because you don't own anything you create. Everything you make goes to the company. Um, you don't get royalties. You don't get any recognition or anything like that. And it's like the worst business to get into."
Mm-hmm.
And that's him talking as a writer.
Wow.
And then he 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 becomes the editor in chief like a year later. And a year later, he's doing what he said the rest of the comics industry was doing.
Yeah.
Taking people's characters and not not giving credit, not compensating with royalties, not all of that stuff, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
he burned, quote unquote burned, um, Jack Kirby, Ditko, the guy who made Ghost Rider. He burned those people.
Hmm.
Now that's an
Okay.
opinion. To me,
Okay.
that's an opinion because where would Kirby be without Stan Lee? I don't think he would be the King Kirby.
You're probably right.
I think he would be some
Right.
guy that got fired by Stan Lee's uncle and nobody ever heard of him. Nobody ever would have heard of him. And the same goes with Ditko. The thing about it is, Stan Lee knew that a year ago. He knew going into that position what that position was like. He warned you.
Mm-hmm.
He said it on stage in front of all the other comics creators. He warned you. This is what's going to happen. This is what happens, you know? And
Wow.
he knew that's what happened, and he made some deals for himself where he would get credit for the things that he had done because he knew that. He told you that. He warned you. He warned him. He told him that, and he helped himself. So that's how he got to be Stan Lee Presents on every page.
Ah, okay.
That's how he was like, everything was made by Stan Lee. You know.
Man, you're getting into it. Okay.
And almost rightfully so that everything was made by Stan Lee, you know? Over half of the characters at Marvel at one time in the 70s was Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he saw the ditch in the road. If and he warned other people about the ditch in the road. And if they didn't want to take the time to like make things good for themselves, you know, and people got mad at him because they say he burned Ditko and Kirby by not acknowledging them, giving them royalties, not giving Kirby's original art back, which I don't even think that was part of Stan's. I think that was after Stan had just been become just a spokesperson for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have much to do with that part of the fight with Kirby. But all I'm saying is Stan saw the danger and he helped himself out of the. You know, he helped himself out
Right.
by being a guy that's you know, John Romita called him a con man, but he was a con man that delivers. Well, I mean, he could be a con man, he could be a shyster, but I think he was just smart at business. He was just a good self promoter, a good
Sure.
businessman. He saw all the pitfalls. He warned those people of the pitfalls, and he avoided them.
Hmm.
And
Wow. Okay.
that's my take on Stan Lee, and that's coming as from, you know, from myself as being an illustrator and a
Mm-hmm.
writer. I mean, Stan Lee was a writer, and I don't think he got the credit. You know, he got credit, or he gave other people credit, or he took more credit than he should have while he was being a writer. But you know, if you don't tell somebody or you don't ask, you want credit, you're not gonna get it.
Right.
So, you know, this is coming from me as an illustrator, saying, yeah, I mean that's bad that they don't automatically do that. That they don't automatically think of the people who are making them money. But sometimes, you know, you have to think, you have to work for yourself. You have to think for yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You can make, and I'm sure Stan Lee was like, if somebody wanted to make a deal with him, like, can you put like Ollie's made by Jack Kirby or whatever? He probably would have done it.
Yeah. Wow.
But you know, if nobody's there to make you think about it,
Right.
then you know, like we worked some stuff out with contracts and stuff for Atomsplit, and
Mm-hmm.
I asked for things, and you either said yes or no, and then we agreed on it at the end, you know.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to like Jack Kirby was a great illustrator. They were all great illustrators, but they were terrible self-helpers.
Self-helpers. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
And that's just what I think. That's just what it comes down to. And I like like I'm saying this as an illustrator too, like but also I'm saying it as I acknowledge that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without Stan
Yeah.
Lee. Without
Yeah.
Stan Lee, there
Yeah.
wouldn't be American comics.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
and he also was one of the first to buck the Comics Code Authority after the whole Tales from the Crypt EC thing, the communist crackdown
Hmm.
and all that. He was one of the first to buck that. He was one of the first to bring in illustrators from different countries. He had Mobius work
Okay.
on the Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer was one of Stan's more favorite characters.
Hmm.
Um, and he had, he was just he I don't no yeah he was a visionary. I'll say he's a visionary. He
That's a good way to put it.
yeah he and he was always selling the comic, and
Hmm.
just the idea of comics.
Yeah.
Um, so all the people that are mad at Stan Lee for not giving Jack Kirby money, there's a lot of or giving Jack Kirby credit and money and whatever else. There's a lot of at fault on Kirby's side too.
Okay.
So that's all I'm saying.
Wow, man, you're getting into it. Okay.
Well, I mean, I've thought about this for a long time. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
because like I said, how long have I been doing comics? I've been doing comics like 20 years, and
yeah,
like 12 of them professionally.
yeah.
And I think about like, and the first time I saw Stan Lee was in this book, 50 Years of Marvel. I didn't know what he looked like before I saw like this coffee table book I got for Christmas. And
That was before you had him sign your comic.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because I was like 10, and I
Yeah, okay.
finally saw what he looked like, and then I was like 15 or 16 when I got signed my comic.
Hmm.
So I finally found out what he looked like,
Yeah.
and I was reading what people had to say about him, and I think I'll send you this link, but I think the best analysis of him and Kirby and Ditko and that whole creator owned I don't know if I want to call it a fiasco, but that thing that happened, you know,
Yeah.
um, they had a great analysis on it in the Comics Journal, and I'll send you that link. But I was just reading a bunch of things about Stan, what he had done, his like a little bit of his personal life, and um, he always wanted to write the. I was thinking about this because people kept mentioning it, and I knew this. He had said this a while ago. I knew it, but I didn't think about it for a while. But he had always wanted to write the great American novel
Really?
as Stan Lee, and not his given name was Stan Lieber. Um, so yeah, he always wanted to write the great American novel, but he had to work, and he worked at in comics for Timely, and that's what he ended up writing.
Yeah.
And
All right.
he never hated on it, and he always promoted it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and now if you think about it, and I might be this is complete poetic license on my part, but I think about it like this: how great of an American novel, how much more great of an American novel can you write than one where the story A continues indefinitely, and B
Mm-hmm.
has people, creators, illustrators, letterers, inkers, writers from all different backgrounds and diversities. That's
Yeah.
America. That's the melting pot. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, he wrote the great American novel, and he's still writing it. It's still going on.
Yep, absolutely.
He's that's to me he did it. But
Yep, I think he did too.
I'm taking a lot of poetic license, and I'm just a fan. So
Right.
just take that for what it's worth. But anyway, those are my general thoughts on Stan Lee and his
Wow.
his fight with Kirby and everybody over the years and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, that's good stuff, man. I mean, you're more into that aspect of it than I am, so
Yeah.
it's good to hear you express all that.
And
For sure.
what he did some like like we said the crazy stuff, the visionary stuff. We both know he worked with Kiss to make the first
Yep.
Kiss comic.
Right.
And they dumped their blood into the ink.
Yeah.
So the printing ink, so all the red is a little bit of Kiss.
Yep.
And it was
amazing.
Now I was just a very little kid then. I think was that all of the original Kiss members.
Yes. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah. That was 70s black and white time. Yeah.
So
although the comic's in color, so
you couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean black and white, like the makeup?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the whole image.
So you can get more pure Kiss than the original lineup.
No, that's for sure.
So,
all right, man. Let's play a song.
Okay.
While we watch you keep going there, are you gonna? So you're gonna shade in the glasses?
Yeah. I'll
Make
give him
his. That's the trademark. So.
Yeah, I'll give him his standard rosy glasses.
I couldn't come up with a good song tonight, so I thought we'd play "Off My Back," which you did illustrations for. I was thinking illustration stuff that we did a video for quite a while ago, before we started the comic strip. So
yeah, when Atomsplit was still an actual band.
Yeah, so I'm gonna spin that, let you go, and then we'll close it out.
Okay, sounds good.
Here we go.
You're so pathetic, gotta let you know. Standing in the shower with my head hung low. It's 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out. I don't care what you're all about. Can't say what I want to. Now you find me standing clear. Give and take yourself away from here. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you. Slouching at the table, it's all screwed up. Well, maybe we're able to admit it's bad luck. It's 1, 2, 3 packs a day. Burn me good and I drift away. Can't say what I'd like to, 'cause I know that you're still here, but my mind is finally clear. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you. Whatever gets you off my back. You shook me. You shook me. I'll shake you till finally shake you. Now's the time, it's finally clear. I'm giving up, I'm out of here. Whatever gets you. Whatever gets you. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets you off my back. Whatever gets Prozac, heart attack, heartbreak, ain't it great? Wait, but hey, leave my skateboard, leave my Sonic Youth Records, and leave about $500.
I forgot how good that song is.
Yeah. I love that
man.
part at the end when you start talking. Just take all that back and.
Yeah, that was one of the early breakups. Yeah, man, shit. Ah, wow. I haven't listened to that full through in a while. So that the bridge in that song, "You Shook Me," is actually was a song. Oh, I opened the door and let the dog in. Another song called "You Shook Me." You Shook Me? No, that's a Led Zeppelin song. Yeah, I forget what it's called. That the producer took and used as the bridge in that song. Someday I got to play that. That was never on its own release, but it was its own song. So.
But you never put it on a CD.
Right.
Okay.
It's unreleased. You shook me, but it used to be the basis of a whole tune. And the guy came in, the producer, and listened to all the songs. He's like, I want to use that as the bridge in this song. So that's what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, think of all the songs that are parts of other songs that you'll never know.
I know.
Yeah,
Just as an example.
that'd be cool if you played that song, the unreleased song, and
I'll play that next.
and then Off My Back again.
Yep. I will do that. I got to dig it out. All right, so running on time here. You're giving him a green sweater. It's the sweater.
Yeah, the classic Stan Lee green sweater.
I love it. All right, looking good. You had some good thoughts.
Yeah,
So he'll be missed.
He will. He'll be missed by his family and stuff, but I don't think he'll be missed by the public because he'll always somehow be a part. As long as Marvel is alive, he'll always be somehow in some way alive, a living document. His Great American novel will still go on. So
we could circle back to him being Walt Disney. You know, he's Walt Disney of Marvel Comics. So
well, that's funny you said that because one of the stories I read about him was he was always, they called him a comics apologist, and promoter, Walt Disney was an apologist and a promoter for cartoons. They thought, why would a grown man want to get into this? And he's like, well, these are a bunch of reasons why I want to make Mickey Mouse cartoons and fairy tale cartoons and stuff. And it's the same with Stan, why do you want to do it? Because it's awesome. Because comics are awesome.
I agree.
So.
All right. Well, let's close it down.
Right.
We'll post this image. Well, it'll probably be ready by the time I get this edited. So it's good stuff.
Thanks.
In memory of Stan Lee and all he has given the world.
All right.